the thing with, by the way, live from the studio, I'm Jimmy Selesky.
Merrick Glazer.
You just listened to Duke fans.
Questionable YouTube content. Questionable early YouTube.
Yeah,
quote,
dude, a lot of
comedy.
The song itself is not, the rap is pretty good. You can see that he had potential to be a radio DJ. It's not bad. I just kind of it's reminiscent of again, being like a Terps guy growing up. It was kind of gay, in his words, that we were so obsessed with our rivalry with Duke, but they didn't give a shit about us. Like, that was the thing. Like, if you talk to people from like that go to Duke, their rival was UNC, because they're both North Carolina teams. And when Maryland was in the ACC, we hated Duke. Like, I'm sure you remember, like, growing up, like, we fucking hate Duke. But Duke didn't give a shit about us. And I feel like that is like the biggest. It's just super simpish, that we were just so obsessed with them, and they didn't. We were like an angry ex-girlfriend.
We were just like a younger brother.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm kind of glad that is over. And now that I am exiled from liking Maryland, now I can't like them ever since I was rejected by them. I still find myself rooting for them a little bit, but it became clearer to me once they rejected me that I was like, you know what?
I fuck with UMBC now.
Yeah, I'm a UMBC guy anyway, dude.
Go Retrievers.
I know, dude. We're not bad this year, the Retrievers. Actually, University of Maryland's not bad either. But yeah, that's just a little intro. That was a little blast from the past. Duke fans stan. Listen to some Eminem before the podcast. Got real depressed. Just
That's
different
crazy
time.
that Peter Rosenberg did that.
Yeah, I didn't know
he is
knew.
like such a fucking like PC guy now.
Is he really?
And he's like, yeah,
Isn't that the way though? Isn't that kind of the way?
yeah, pretty much.
Like, doesn't you? Whenever you dig back, it's kind of like, even with Jimmy Kimmel, like, he had that whole thing where, like, he did like blackface for a sketch.
Like, I'm pretty sure he didn't like Odd Future for a while because like Tyler the Creator would say like, slurs and shit in his raps.
Yeah.
But it's like, you made a joke about raping someone in that. You said you're going to go Duke lacrosse on him.
Well, that's the hypocrisy of all that shit, is that...
And that was probably only like, 3 or 4 years before he fucking,
If I had to peg a time period on that, I would say it was when we were in middle school, probably. I want to say like mid-2000s, because all the players that he was referencing, JJ Redick and all that shit, like, that was that era. And that is kind of the hypocrisy of a lot of the super PC guys now that have been around for a while, is they all made those kind of jokes back then. They all did that kind of shit. And then I think what happens is, as the culture changes, they realize, they're like, this guy knows that this is in his closet.
Oh, yeah.
So now he kind of has to like...
Now he's got to be like extra walking on eggshells.
Exactly.
Just to like counteract whenever this comes back to bite him in the ass.
Yeah. Which I would just be embarrassed at the quality of it. But again, back in the day, dude, that was the quality.
No, that was like high quality back in the day.
That was. It is weird looking at it now. You're like, holy shit. Like, whenever I try to compete with Gen Z viral videos, like, my brother will show me like a comedy sketch from like now, and I'm like, oh yeah, what about this? And then I watch and I'm like, this was trash. We had no good videos, dude.
Yeah. Well, it's so weird now, like videos on like Instagram Reels or like TikTok, like it'll be a fucking like a like Family Guy clip with someone like speed running Minecraft, like, and then there's also like a fucking guy like popping bubbles, and then there's another like tire running over a fucking soap that was carved, and it's like all in the same video, and you're like, what the fuck is going on right now?
It is wild, dude. It is wild. Speaking of sports, what happened since the Super Bowl? I think that we did the podcast before the Super Bowl. Great game. I know we're a little late to the party on this. It was officially a week after the Super Bowl. You stopped through for a bit.
I had to do a little, so Valentine's Day was on Tuesday this year. And Tuesday is like a hard night, I feel like, to go out for dinner. And then obviously Valentine's Day is a hard night to go out for dinner anyway.
Yeah.
So I did the adult move, Recently turned 30. I'm an adult now.
You're an adult.
Have a house. I'm very old now.
Yeah, adults aren't going out on Valentine's Day.
Yeah, you're going out the Sunday before Valentine's Day, which coincidentally was Super Bowl Sunday. I didn't even realize that when I made the reservations.
I did wonder if the Glazer brothers are from planet Neptune in the chat. I was like, how do you guys not know it's Super Bowl Sunday? But then I realized, Oh, you guys just don't care.
Yeah, we don't give a fuck. Dude, I came over and I was more interested in the commercials than I was the fucking game that was going on.
Yeah.
That's kind of how, honestly, like, just for a frame of reference, growing up, the Super Bowl was huge in the Glazer household because my parents would break out the deep fryer.
Oh.
So then we'd have like good fried food. And then there would be either a Full House or a Family Matters marathon going on ABC Family. And me and Alex would be in the big on the big TV watching Family Matters or Full House during the Super Bowl, and my parents would be in the kitchen watching the Super Bowl on like a fucking
the kitchen
13-inch
TV.
Yeah. And we'd be like, "Are the French fries done?"
You guys are watching Family Matters.
Watching Kimmy Gibbler fuck it up again.
Oh, she's at it again, that Kimmy Gibbler. Kimmy. That's jacked up, dude. That's a little jacked up.
Yeah.
That's funny.
And then we'd like flip over to watch the commercials and be like, "Oh, that's a funny commercial."
Now, how many commercials did you catch this time? I was pretty in my element by the time you guys got there, as I recall. I wasn't really paying too much attention to anything, as I recall.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there weren't that many good commercials. The only thing that like made me so confused was like, I think everyone was fucked up by the Tubi commercial.
Yeah.
Where it was just like very surreal, and it didn't make any sense. And at the end of it, it's like, what is this supposed to be? And then all of a sudden Tubi pops up, and it's like, why though?
Yeah, that got me a little bit too. That and the talking babies for E-Trade or whatever was kind of like that too, where it was like they kind of, even Marissa said it was like they kind of like went back to like the 2011 commercial that they had, and it's like, dude, we just realized that this shit sucks. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know why we ever thought this was hilarious. It was just fucking. There was no real commercial that really stood out to me. I think probably the best, most legendary Super Bowl campaign of all time that I can recall in recent history. Which also, Geico is known for breaking out their new campaigns for commercials. But when Tide did the thing a couple of years ago, I don't know if you remember this, but basically they had like a running joke throughout the entire Super Bowl where you'd be like watching a commercial and you'd have no idea what it was until the end, and it would, every commercial be completely different, but like super well produced, and it would be like an emotional commercial or like a funny commercial, and like they would all be kind of mimicking like, oh, this is probably like a beer commercial, and at the end it'd be like, nope, it's a Tide commercial. You know what I mean? Like that was really good that they were doing that. But there's not really many anything this year that really struck me. I didn't really hear anybody talking about that. Even the Super Bowl show itself, in the moment, I thought
Like
was
the halftime show.
the halftime show.
I love the halftime.
Yeah, the
show.
halftime show was good. Ballsy
But the
move.
entire time, I just kept being like, "But who's the special guest?" And then it was over, and it's like, oh, I guess there wasn't a special guest.
How do you feel about the no special guest? Do you think that was because that's obviously a power move?
It's a power move, but it's also like, I don't know. I wonder if they should have like announced that it was just going to be Rihanna.
Well,
because like I was watching it on the edge of my seat, like, damn, like who the fuck is Jay-Z about to come out? Is fucking Kanye about to come out? That'd be crazy.
that would be nuts.
Is fucking ASAP Rocky gonna come out? Is fucking like who's gonna come out? And then all of a sudden it's over.
Isn't that? I mean, like I respect it in a way because it is, again, it's ballsy to just be like, nah, dude, I'm gonna go out there and just fucking carry this whole show. No guests, no nothing. But at the same time, I feel like that is why a lot of people watch the show, because you want to have that moment where like somebody drops out of a fucking fighter jet into the fucking stadium, and
Yeah,
you're like,
exactly.
oh shit, it's Elton John. You're like,
Yeah,
oh, what
yeah.
the fuck, And when that doesn't happen, you're like, what are you doing? Cool show though, cool show. Rihanna probably could have worked a little bit on the lip syncing. I noticed there's a couple moments when I was like, damn, she is not even trying to pretend that she's singing this shit right now, which is always a little disappointing, a little bit.
I mean, what are they gonna do though? They can't fucking do a live performance during all that shit.
That's true. That is true. Also, shouts out to Chris Stapleton with the national anthem. That was good. The national anthem was good. I think you might have missed that.
I
but
missed
that was,
that for
That was
sure.
good. He just stood up there fucking, that wasn't lip sync, and that was fucking, but also he's not fucking running around like Super Mario platforms with fucking Goombas running around and doing shit.
Yeah, exactly.
But overall, good time. Great game. Shouts out Kansas City. I feel like everybody in our room of the game was kind of rooting for Philly.
Yeah,
And,
everyone was Eagles over there.
and
I'm not sure why.
I think it's because,
It's just closer geographically.
it's closer.
so we can claim it.
And I think that people in Baltimore kind of look at Philly as like a sister city a little bit, just because of the proximity. But
Just not Pittsburgh.
yeah, but having visited Philly, I don't really consider it a sister city of ours. Like I was kind of expecting it to be more like Baltimore in the previous times that I've been there, and it really wasn't. It was much more like, I've said this before, but it was like a mini New York City. It reminded me more of a mini New York than a Baltimore.
It's definitely more of a mini New York, but like it is kind of like a port city. So like I can see the comparison a little bit.
It's just hard for me.
And it's very like Irish Catholic, and it's very like there's definitely there's more similarities than not.
Yeah.
So I definitely get the comparisons.
And then Kansas City is just like, that's a weird city because it's kind of two cities, you know? It's like Kansas City, Missouri is the main one. And then I actually did some reading up on Kansas City, the Kansas corner here. Apparently, they founded the original city of Kansas City in Missouri. And then across the river, there were like developers on the other side of the Missouri River that were like, well, we want people to move here, so why don't we just call it Kansas City as well? And so, but then you think about it, it's like, well, if there's any state that should get the claims to being able to call their shit Kansas City, it should be Kansas, should it not? You know?
Most likely.
I always wondered what it's like to like, if you live there. Have you ever been to that region? Or that city in particular?
Not that city. I've probably been in that region though, but just not in like actual Missouri, but like maybe a neighboring state.
It's got to be a weird thing, I guess, like, because like, you know how like we'll be like, oh, are you going to like west? You going over west? You going over east? You going to like South Baltimore? I wonder if over there they're like, yo, you on the Kansas side or the Missouri side? Or if they truly do look at themselves as like two separate cities.
I bet they do.
Because I think technically they have different mayors and they have different everythings, but the Kansas City Metro expands all of that. So it's just kind of, I wonder that. But shouts out to them, dude. Mahomes deserved it, dude. That guy's running out there with fucking one leg and just fucking pulling it out. And I know there was a lot of flack about that call at the end of the game with kind of like gave them. That's the problem is like we very rarely get a Super Bowl game that is truly a magnificent matchup because that's really all you want. And so I heard somebody mention this before, but we've really kind of lucked out this year with final games. The World Cup finals was fucking amazing. I mean, the fact that France and Argentina went to penalty kicks, the most electric thing in soccer, when you play 120 minutes of soccer and then it's still not decided, and then you go to the PKs, and then Argentina wins it. That was fucking amazing. The World Series, that's the other thing I got to feel for Philly, because they lost in two major finals. Because the Philadelphia Phillies went to the World Series this year and lost in Game 7, I think.
Damn.
That's as far as you can go while still losing.
Yeah, you fucking blue balls your city twice.
Yeah, so I kind of feel for Philly in that regard. But at the same time, it's like,
hey,
I
listen,
can't.
You know what? Know who's coming to get revenge?
Who's looking for revenge?
The Flyers.
The Flyers. Yep, the Flyers, dude.
The Flyers, dude. It's all on them now.
And don't forget about the 76ers, dog. Don't sleep on the 76ers. See, that's the other thing. It's like they have so many opportunities.
Are the Penguins in Philly, too?
That's Pittsburgh Penguins.
Pittsburgh Penguins.
Pittsburgh Penguins. But it's like, as a city, you have so many opportunities, and I can't help but think of Philly as every kid from South Jersey that went to Towson University. And I'm just like, you know what? I'm glad you guys lost. You guys really annoy me.
Even though it's not even the same place.
I mean, it kind of, like basically, the Jersey's interesting because everyone in the north side of Jersey is more like New York-ish.
Oh, yeah, they claim to be a New Yorker.
Yeah, that's like New York Metro. That's like their thing. But everyone from South Jersey has a much more Philly-ish culture. So when I think of Philly, I think of like Philly, but then I also think of like every annoying person from Towson University, which, you know.
Including people from around here.
Including myself. But yeah, good Super Bowl. You hate to see it come down to a penalty call, and there are some ridiculous penalty calls. But, when a game's that close, I mean, that's kind of what it comes down to, unfortunately. 38-35, your boy hit the over. Bet $25 on it, which is a weak-ass amount of money to bet. But I'm all about the small game. I'm small ball all the way, dude. I'm small balling it.
You're like a little beetle.
I am.
It just starts with a tiny little ball of dung.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, weeks, months, years from now,
I have a slightly bigger ball of shit.
exactly.
And then I lose all of it.
And then something else comes in and swoops it away.
Small ball, baby. Small ball. Couple things to address outside of the 1 week old Super Bowl. An even older thing that I just got on the train for, dude. I think we talked about it a little bit after the cast last week, but I finally got on the Last of Us train.
Oh.
And what episode are they up to right now? Because I'm only at 3.
I don't know, because I honestly haven't been watching it.
Have you watched any of it?
No, not at all.
Really?
Know what I've been watching?
What?
I've been on the Poker Face train.
All right.
It's a so like Knives Out, the the mystery movie by Rian Johnston. So like he had the sequel come out, the Glass Onion one on Netflix. But then like a week or two after that came out, he was also working on like a Peacock TV series, which I know doesn't sound great. Peacock, the streaming service everyone always forgets about, even existing.
Still better than Tubi.
Still better than Tubi. But so it's by that guy. It's like a serialized murder mystery show with Natasha Lyonne as the main character. But basically she has kind of like I guess like some sort of like heightened sense of like a bullshit meter for people. So like if you're like, you know what, my shirt's red today, she would be like, bullshit, because you got a blue shirt on. But like she just instinctively knows when people are just like lying straight to her face. Okay. So then she'll get into situations where it's like, wait a second, you said that you didn't know anything about that, and I'm calling bullshit on that.
So is she like a criminal investigator then?
No, she's like a...
she just calls people out on their bullshit in everyday life?
Pretty much.
She
She was working at a hotel or a casino, and one of her friends got murdered because she stumbled upon one of their big high rollers. Her friend was cleaning their room, saw on the laptop he had some questionable content on the computer. And then she took it up with her manager. The manager has her killed. And then Natasha Lyonne, throughout a series of events and questioning and investigation, figures out the crime. And then now she's on the run because the casino boss is trying to hunt her down and kill her. So then each episode is then she stops at a new place, tries to set up a new life, but then ultimately some shit goes down and she has to solve a murder real quick.
Damn.
And then usually there's a little countdown timer, because once she's in a town, or if she uses her credit card or like uses a phone or someone identifies her within like...
Is the countdown timer
3
visible on the
days
screen?
or 3 hours, the fucking guy who's trying to kill her shows up.
Is that kind of like... Remember that show 24? Where they kind of did that? You know what I'm talking about?
There's no actual countdown clock like 24.
Okay,
But
okay.
like, it's just like, that's her reason for having to stay on the road and keep moving from town to town to town. And
Now let me ask you this question, because this segment is brought to you by Peacock.
yes.
This is a Peacock commercial.
Use code LFTS on Peacock at checkout.
to get an even freer subscription.
Exactly.
Even freer. Do they release the episodes weekly, or do they put it out all at once?
Weekly.
That is the thing now.
I think that's the move. I think Netflix realized their mistakes, because I think even Netflix is moving towards that type of release schedule now in the future.
It's the way to do it. And I've had this conversation so many times in so many different venues that I can't remember if we've talked about this on this podcast.
We
But
probably have.
I've been noting that seems, because that was the old way of doing it. And now they're going back to that.
Yeah, and I let people actually like have shit to talk about.
Exactly. And that was one of the reasons why I brought up The Last of Us 2, because it really is kind of like that old format of releasing episodes that I feel like places have kind of gone back to. And I think the most recent debate I had about this was when John was, he did some work with Jackson Dean. He did like a drumming event. This guy is like the biggest up and coming country star now. It's just weird now as you get like older that like the people around you just start doing more and more awesome shit. And you don't think about it as awesome because it just becomes like normal.
Yeah.
Like you've been working with Stav and you're just like, yeah, I've been working with Stav. Like, whatever, bro. Whatever, dude. That's just, I should be working with Stav, bro. I'm fucking 30. I own a house. Obviously, I'm working with Stav, you know? But we were kind of having that debate about, you know, when he was talking to some marketing agent, because it was like this industry event where like all these like PR people go and like watch the person play and see if they want to work with him. And she was saying to him like, well, you know what I tell my artists is like, you got to work up to like an album and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, wait a second. Is maybe the because my methodology has always been releasing. I still believe in this. I think this is the most effective way, is to just consistently release singles to gain traction. And this PR woman to him was saying that like, well, no, you got to work up to an album. And I'm like, could it be possible that that tactic is more applicable to people that are already kind of established?
Yeah.
Like, you know, it makes sense if you're an artist on a certain level that actually has an audience and a fan base to build up suspense for an album, you know? Like, for instance, if you're Rihanna, you can not put anything out for 6 years and then all of a sudden there's a fucking commercial, you know, leading up to the Super Bowl that you're going to be doing the halftime show. And then like, it's just big fucking build up where all of a sudden she's on the cover of fucking Vogue and all this shit. And it's like, it's very easy for her to just like build up suspense for this like new thing coming up. But it's like, if you're a person on our level, that doesn't really make sense, you know? So that was kind of the debate back and forth. And I was just kind of referencing the fact that even the streaming platforms with their big shows have kind of gone back to that. And I kind of took that as a point in my favor. Still on the fence about the move forward because so far nothing is working, but you know, what are you going to do? But the other thing I was going to say about this show, The Last of Us, is it's really good. And you played the video game, so I'm not necessarily spoiling any premises for you or anything like that. Now I'm realizing I have 4 things about this. The first thing was the episode release. The second thing is the format of any type of post-apocalyptic movie or show is pretty much the same to a T.
Yeah.
Like every single, especially when it's like zombie shit, every single pilot episode is going to be like the day it happens, and then it like flashes back to another thing, and then it flashes forward to now, and it's like the same type of, it's literally the same formula over and over again. And then you realize it's like, oh, The Walking Dead, like maybe, okay, so The Walking Dead when it first came out was huge, and rightfully so. It was really fucking good. And that was kind of caught the tail end of like the last hurrah of like people still watching stuff on regular television, because that shit was out on what, AMC when it first came out. People were turning on channel 27. Does anybody even know what channel 27 on your TV is anymore? No, you don't fucking know. You know? So like, but it was the same type of thing. But then I think what happens is you can only take it so far before there's kind of nowhere else to go, and you kind of just have to like reset with a new group of characters with a slightly new premise, and then just run the whole thing back, and it's just as entertaining. You know, like there's not really that many differences between The Last of Us and Walking Dead on its face.
Yeah.
It's a smaller crew of people.
Well, and it's more about like the people than it is about the zombies or the fucking the whatever they're called in Last of Us, the fucking fungi people.
It is cool. The cool thing about science fiction, so that was point B of
point 1.
You
point
got
1, 3 more to go.
Point 1 was the episodes.
Oh, true.
Point B, because I'm going in alternating letter number order, was that point C. I'm gonna have to call out conservatives on this, because conservatives are pissing me off lately. Really pissing me off. Maybe you heard about like how everybody was complaining about like a third episode. Not everybody, but like the
Not
fucking
complaining. I heard a lot of people being like, "This is so fucking beautiful."
yeah. Okay.
I've never cried in my life before, but I watched a TV show today and I cried.
All right,
It's like, all right, fucking bitch.
Not to be that guy. Not to be that. Not to
I mean,
start.
listen, I fucking cry watching like Disney movies, so I can't talk.
It's you never want to admit when you get a little, as my brother calls it, sweaty watching a scene in a movie or
Yeah.
a show. But you know, I think it really comes down to the type of sphere of like just media and different things that enter your brain waves. Very much a testament to how people can become in a kind of like an echo chamber, because obviously my echo chamber is more right leaning influenced, and so everything that I was hearing about this third episode, this infamous third episode, is that it's like just an unnecessary, you know, forcing of a storyline of two gay men, blah 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 blah, culture, and
You follow a lot of like elderly closeted homosexuals on Facebook?
on
or-
exclusively elderly
Yeah.
closeted homosexuals. That's all I follow anymore. All I follow.
You caught a whiff and couldn't let go.
If you're old and maybe gay, I'm following you. I'm following you. But no, just like the Ben Shapiros of the world and things like that. You know, so naturally, I kind of went into it assuming that would be the case, and I got to admit, it was a really touching episode, and a tear did not fall from my eyes. As a man, you can't let a tear fall.
yeah.
You know, but what I want to get built in for watching movies is I want to have like a windowsill,
Yeah.
like on my eyelids that like comes out to here,
yeah.
so that like I can
So
well
there
up.
can be some like surface tension
Surface
for the,
yeah.
the tear to cling to.
Exactly, because the last thing you want to do when you're getting a little sweaty is blink. You know, so now I'm having a staring contest with God, just hoping that my tears will evaporate before I blink, and then it falls in my face, and now all of a sudden I officially have to admit that I cried
Yeah.
during. Because if you well up, that's not crying. You can well up about a lot of things, you know, but once that fucking tear takes its fucking trail.
Yeah, that's the difference between stubbing a toe and fucking
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Or like eating something spicy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you eat something spicy, you can well up, but if you start just crying, you got bigger fish to fry, dude. That's a little OD.
Yeah, there's some trauma you got to unpack.
But it was really fucking good. It was a really good and really gay episode. And I think that's kind of what, you know, I've said this before. Please don't let the nerds become the face or the voice of like conservative leaning politics, because at the end of the day, they're fucking nerds. Like Ben Shapiro, I agree with a lot of the stuff he says, but on particular things, it's like, dude, chill the fuck out, bro. There are bigger
get
issues.
Some fucking pussy, bro.
Please get some pussy, dude. Please get some pussy. I know you're married, but you know, figure something out. But like, it's like, because what it does is, and you saw the same thing happen with the Grammys and like all the like Sam Smith stuff, and it's like, you know, when the conservative, when the right, I'm just gonna start saying the right wing starts complaining about like, oh, this is satanic, this is blah 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 blah. It's like, dude, now it's giving like 1950s rock and roll is the devil, 1980s, you know, don't listen to Marilyn Manson, he's satanic, you know, devil's lettuce, parental advisory, like,
well, and it's also just like very, you know, contradictory of like everything else that like that fucking segment of society always says, like, shit's getting too PC.
yeah.
Why can't we make jokes anymore? Oh, wow. I'm not secretly gay. I don't go to public bathhouses and suck off dudes because I actually love America. My body, my choice, especially when it is spreading genetic venereal diseases between guys at truck stops.
You don't want to become the pearl clutchers. That's really kind of where I've kind of started to find where my niche is I
clutching pearls with your fucking tongue, bro.
Yeah.
That's all the right does.
Well, it's like for a while, and I still do think this is the case. I think what's happening is, in the 90s, the right conservative, evangelical type of political philosophy was the establishment philosophy. And so that's why you saw a lot of cultural shift going in the direction of we need to cut back on these type of things on the TV and this type of stuff in music and blah, blah, blah. Well, you need parental advisory and stuff for like harmful content and shit. And in the 90s, the liberals were kind of the ones that were like, dude, chill the fuck out, man. Like, free speech, bro. I should be able to say what I want to say, like, I'm a fucking atheist, dude. I don't have to believe in God. Like, stop telling me I got to have your religion in my schools and blah, 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 blah. So, like, in the 90s, the liberals were the kind of like against the grain, and the conservatives were the man. In the 2010s, up till the present, I would say that has kind of shifted more to the culture being dominated more by more left-wing type of values, and they kind of went that same direction of kind of becoming the pearl clutchers, where like you're like, oh, you can't say that, you can't have this, like don't make this type of joke, don't have that, blah 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 blah. And then so all the people that are just, because there's really only two types of people in reality. There's the people that just want to be left the hell alone, and people that won't leave you the hell alone. And so in any given time period, those roles can switch between the parties. And that's why I think, like, if I was this age in 1996, I would have totally been like a fucking Democrat, because that was like the Bill Hicks fucking, when Jon Stewart was first starting out, like they were kind of like the, Greg Giraldo type guys. Like they were like against the fucking grain because the grain was that way. Now I find myself sympathizing more with the right-leaning thing, because again, my whole kind of thing just comes down to like, just please leave me alone. But I think the problem is now is that being the pearl clutchers really comes down to being the offended group. And I think that the right has kind of learned, the new right has kind of learned that there is currency in being offended and saying that I'm offended by something. And so now they're kind of adopting this thing where like, now we're going to be the offended people. And what do you think about that? What if I say I'm offended by this?
It's like when fucking our parents got on Facebook and they're trying to like they're not doing it right. They're doing it like fucking imbeciles, and it makes them look even worse.
Well, that's the problem. It's like when you fucking start complaining about Sam Smith and his stupid fucking performance and shit, it's like, yeah, you sound like a fucking idiot, because first of all, you're acting like this is new. You're acting like the idea of like satanic imagery in music is some new phenomenon that is, emblematic of this crazy cultural shift we've made towards that type of stuff, which I don't necessarily disagree with, but it's like you got to kind of pick your battles. And, like I said on the last podcast or a couple podcasts ago, it's like the problem is it's like when you have those guys, it's like, yeah, I kind of agree with your like position on the border and stuff, but like when you start taking the whole thing, no sex before marriage, all weed, no, don't smoke weed should be illegal, it's like, dude, shut up, because now you're the fucking nerds again. Now you're becoming the nerds.
Yeah, you're being a fucking teacher.
You're being a teacher.
No one wants to fucking listen to a teacher unless you're a nerd too.
Yeah, only nerds like teachers, bro. Why don't you fucking give me an apple or something, So it's like, I just really hope for the sake of discourse that because as at the moment I do, fucking shoot me, I identify more with the right-leaning way of thought. But I don't want to see us become the fucking nerds. I don't want to see us becoming the ones that are walking around being like, this needs to be taken off of television. This is like, I don't want to be the ones trying to get people canceled. I don't want to do that. You know, like the reality of music and show business is it's always been about shock value. You know, you have people in show business that are talented, and talent gets you so far. Some of them are, like Tim Dillon says, some of them are talented, a lot of them aren't. And so a lot of what goes into it is just the fucking production value and stuff like that. You know, when you have a Super Bowl halftime show and the purpose of the show is more, you know, you're going to have Rihanna lip sync her music while you have a bunch of guys in fucking hazmat suits dancing around and moving around from Super Mario platform to Super Mario platform. It's like, that's a cool show, but it's much more the production value of the show is much more based in the kind of like just the performance of it, as opposed to the spectacle. Good word for it. It's the spectacle. So that's kind of always been the model. And so when you're in 2023 and everything is a fucking spectacle, you kind of got to fucking go out and do something absolutely ridiculous. And what bugs me is whoever came up with this idea of the Grammys thing with Sam Smith doing that, it's like they did that with the full knowledge that this was going to fucking get this kind of fucking backlash and get that kind of like all the people, and you're just kind of playing into it when you sit there and actually be like, well, actually, I do think that was like, dude, it was just fucking like, it's just a fucking Grammys. Nobody fucking watches that shit anyway. I don't even watch it. The only reason I even know it happened is because you took the bait and just started fucking talking about it nonstop, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think, I don't know. All that shit is loserly. It's the same shit as being a fucking nerd in my eyes.
What?
If anyone cares about politics, you're gay.
I will say caring about politics is kind of gay. But yeah, it just bugs me. Just please chill the fuck out. There are bigger fish to fry.
Bro, be an adult. Go home. Watch some fucking anime. And learn how to read using subtitles.
Like, I'm not going to lie. Like, you know, and this is kind of going back to the Last of Us thing, you know, carrying us into point E, you know, there are times when you can just tell that they are just forcing this, like, thing into the production. Like, you can tell when they're forcing a narrative about something to make a political statement, or if they fucking force, you know, like when I watch Don't Look Up and like, you know, the fucking girl playing like the main fucking chick has like the fucking like hipster chick haircut. It's like, first of all, no chick at fucking NASA would have that haircut, because like it like certain things like that are like, there's just, you can't help but think that there are certain roles when you're like, really, that's who the fucking president is. And you're just like, you can tell when it's done just as like a, yeah, that's right, we did it. Fuck you. What are you going to say? But were you mad? You mad, bro? You mad that we fucking did that? It's like, all right. But there are also tasteful ways to do it. Like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, anytime because there are absolutely times when they try to force the gay thing and the trans thing into regular shit where it doesn't belong. There are absolutely times when they do that, where it's very clear where they're forcing either a race narrative or LGBT narrative into regular shows where it doesn't even it doesn't even push the plot along. It's just this kind of like thing where you're almost sitting there like, do they have to do that? Like, is this like a rule now in Hollywood that like you can't just put out a movie that doesn't have some type of undertone about this or the other thing? So it does get annoying. And then when you're on this side of it, where you're the people that are like that, you know, if you see all of Hollywood kind of leaning in one direction, and then they're constantly fucking, you know, ramrodding their political messagery into every single thing, whether it be the Super Bowl or the Grammys or a movie or any fucking thing ever, and then you get annoyed by it and they go, well, dude, it's just a fucking movie. It's like, well, if it's just a fucking movie, then why? Like, you're doing it too. If it's just a fucking movie, then just make a fucking movie, you know?
I don't know. I think you got tricked. I think you got tricked into talking about all this stuff and keeping your attention and mind off of all the other shit that's actually going on, i.e., like 3 to 4 to 5 different trains getting derailed and exploding with hazardous chemicals all over the country. Us like shooting down spy balloons like left and right for the last week.
Hey, I'm kind of
Yeah, you're sitting here questioning whether it was okay for a character to be gay in The Last of Us.
what I'm agreeing with the fact that it was
You're
okay.
arguing whether Sam Smith should have worn that outfit or not.
No. Don't. You shouldn't have worn that outfit. It wasn't flattering. It wasn't flattering. Maybe I'm miscommunicating my point. My point this whole time has been that the conversation becomes exhausting, where I do see the point, and I think it would be dishonest to try to say that stuff doesn't go on, because it very clearly does. But
I mean, you also realize that like nerds are the ones writing these shows, right?
Totally.
And those same nerds are the same ones that like from out of nowhere made up a bunch of this shit.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
they're like the small percentage of the entire world that actually. And I'm not saying that in regards to like people being gay, because that's obviously a real thing. But like
sure.
for the most part, a lot of these issues are just completely made up.
Yeah. It's
for
like fan
someone,
fiction.
yeah, someone made fan fiction to be upset about something that doesn't exist.
Absolutely.
And you're falling for it.
No.
You're the biggest rube I've ever met.
I've been duped. No. My whole point with this whole little sideaway was to kind of lead back into saying, like I said before, the conversation about Sam Smith at the Grammys is silly, because we've taken it to the point where now we're gonna like fucking nitpick at every single little thing, where there are bigger issues. It's in my fucking notes. Like, I had a conversation with Joe this week after a band rehearsal, which is just me and him, and we were talking about somebody said something that kind of made me think, and it was in regards to the Chinese spy balloon thing, which is at this point a 2-week-old story. It's very interesting.
But also, there's been like 3 to 4 new balloons that have been shot down.
Exactly.
In like the last, and in not just the U.S., like in Canada too, and like, yeah, I don't know.
And here,
it's
but
weird.
Well, it's weird, but here's the weirder thing.
But
in my
also,
opinion.
all of this stuff is being talked about more than all
And
of
that
the
is-
fucking like the town in Ohio that basically had a nuke dropped on them when a train blew up, and they control burned a poisonous chemical.
And that is the duping of both things. So you almost have to wonder, both sides are at play here, because you're going like, okay, so this is the classic, fucking whatever the guy's name, Calibus or whatever, the Roman emperor, the guy who Joaquin Phoenix played in fucking Gladiator, whatever his name was. He was the son of Marcus Aurelius, who was known as the last great emperor of Rome. He was like a philosopher king, and then his son was just like a total piece of shit, and kind of started this trend of all the fucking emperors being total pieces of shit. And he said, like, bread and circuses, and that whole bread and circus thing was like, just give him entertainment, give him food, and then we can do whatever the fuck we want. As the empire collapses and shit goes to the fucking ground, we can distract the people with all these little stupid things that don't matter. So you have maybe you could say Hollywood, which is primarily a left-leaning industry, obviously, doing this stuff for shock value, and then the right taking the bait and just complaining about that shit, when in reality, it's all distracting from the bigger thing, which is that this whole situation with the balloon, and then 3 more fucking UFOs being shot down out of the sky in random different areas in North America, and then the trains being derailed. What's really amazing about that whole situation is you realize the power of the media, because if the media wanted to, they could easily. This is really what kind of got me. Is somebody said this and made me think. They were like, what's crazy about the whole Chinese spy balloon is, if they wanted to, even if it wasn't true, they could totally take this story and make it seem like the biggest deal in the fucking world, and people would be terrified. People would be thinking we're about to go to war, but they didn't. And so it's like, it is amazing when you see like the same shit could happen, but public opinion is far less influenced by the objective event, and far more influenced by how the media tells them they should feel about it or care about it. So right now, you have this crazy, unprecedented shit happening where China is kind of basically openly spying in the U.S. on the U.S. with this balloon. Probably they say it was an accident, but they say a lot of stuff is an accident that I don't fucking believe. So then you have all this other stuff happening with other UFOs. You don't know who that was, or if it was China, or if it was fucking Russia, or if it was somebody else. You don't fucking know. And then you have these random things happening. You had the Nord Stream pipeline getting fucking blown up, and people are just now even starting to wonder if that could have even been America. I don't fucking know nearly enough to speculate on that. Yeah. But that was a big fucking deal that happened like within the past 2 years. And
there's like weird, like, I think we talked about this the other week where there was like a woman that got arrested in Maryland who was like planning to take down the power grid. And it's like,
I heard about that.
Yeah. And that's also happened like in other spots in the country. Mm-hmm. And it's like, why the fuck now is this happening?
Yeah, it all seems to be happening all at once. And like I said before, if the media wanted to, they could easily be covering this shit and bringing the public to like code red. Like, guys, in the past 3 weeks, we have shot down a Chinese, what we believe to be a spy balloon that was flying openly in our airspace and doing whatever, and then it flew through the entire continental U.S. We shot it came in through fucking Montana over Canada, and it went over the entire continental United States. We shot it off the coast of fucking South Carolina. That's a long fucking way to go. I'm not going to sit here and act like I would know how to make that call or how it is, but my point is that like these things aren't normal, especially when you pair it with the other things that have been going on between the train derailments and these other UFOs. They still can't maybe they have identified, but as far as the public is concerned, we don't fucking know what the fuck is going on, and we're not being told to care, and therefore people are just kind of not caring. And you have to wonder, should we care? Like, is this a big deal? Because to me, what's happening right now really does seem like a big fucking deal. And it makes me kind of feel like we truly are on the verge of some type of major conflict. What you kind of have to think about is people have this weird, distorted perception, including myself, and it's natural because I wasn't alive in World War II. I have no real context to be able to actually remember what the lead up to World War I was like, or what World War II or the Civil War. And so in the way you're taught history, you're kind of just taught like, and on this day, the war started. And on this day, the treaty was signed that officially ended the war. And then you kind of get this really kind of just like black and white, cut and dry, segmented view of history where you're like, everything was normal. And then in 1860 something, the Civil War started. And then we had a Civil War for 5 years. And then in 1865, it ended. And it's like, well, what about all the shit that led up to that? And what about all the shit that happened in the aftermath of that? We didn't just turn a light switch and go, oh, okay, war's on. I'm just sitting here and we're just doing a podcast.
I mean, back then they did kind of do it like that.
Well,
they waited for everyone to line up before they started shooting at each other.
They did kind of do that.
They were pretty fair about war back then.
Well, in the eyes of the public, it was like that because you want to talk about, media influence now. Well, I mean, like we've said countless times on here before, think about what the media.
The only media back then was propaganda.
It was propaganda, and
it was very controlled. So then there would only be one source of information, and that's how you would get everyone on the same fucking page.
Yeah, no alternate. So if you're like a dude in the middle of fucking Virginia, I could imagine that it could have to you seemed like all of a sudden one day we're at war because you're probably just like, working on your fucking farm or doing whatever. And then out of fucking nowhere, you maybe you're not a guy who follows the news, because you live in the middle of fucking nowhere. Like maybe if you were a news guy that was constantly reading the newspaper every time it came to your house once a month or however, every time the fucking Pineapple, the fucking Post Express or Abe Lincoln drove by your house with a horse and fucking threw a paper once a year, like you'd kind of be able to kind of connect the dots a little bit. But if you were just a regular casual back then, there's no internet. You don't fucking know what's happening until all of a sudden you get that fucking big post on the door of your church in the middle of town going, we're at war. And you're like, oh shit, we're at war. You have no way of actually having a gradient of how that escalated. So it's like, now you're sitting here going like, it was like that back then, and to the eyes of the public, it may have seemed like that, but behind the scenes, these things don't just kind of pop off out of nowhere. It is a gradual process. And I always use COVID as an example because I think that is a major historical event that, even with 9/11, like that happened during our lifetimes and we were consciously aware of it, but we were 9. So it's like weren't following the news up to that. Like I'm sure maybe our parents, may have, if they were watching the news, may have been able to kind of see how something was coming, but probably not. Because again, the internet wasn't as big of a thing back then. So even then, it's like if the news was just kind of running along like nothing was going on, and all of a sudden, boom, 2 planes hit a fucking tower, and you're like, oh shit. And so like, you look at the way COVID kind of escalated to where, in December 2020, nobody really talked about it. And then in January 2020, people kind of talked about it, but the media wasn't telling us it was something that we need to be alarmed about. It was just kind of like an inside joke, it felt like. Like every now and then you'd kind of be like talking and like the topic would come up like, oh yeah, fucking coronavirus, you're drinking a fucking Corona Light. Oh, fucking It was like that. And it was kind of like that up until about a week before everything just shut down. And people didn't see it coming. It wasn't like this thing where it was this gradual thing where you could slowly start to feel the air shift. And then you look at that, like that's a thing that pretty much anybody that's able to listen to this podcast is old enough to remember, unless we have any fucking 3-year-old fans out there, which I don't fucking know. But you consciously saw how something could escalate and escalate and escalate, and you're not really told to care, so you don't. But at that time, when we're all kind of making inside jokes and just kind of like, fucking around about it and not thinking it's a big deal, and then all of a sudden, but the whole time it is the biggest deal of your lifetime to that point, but you didn't fucking know that because you weren't told to think that. And so then on March 15th, the fucking world shuts down. March 15th, 2020, Larry Hogan comes out and announces that all, fucking whatevers are getting shut down, restaurants, stores, whatever. And people are like, what the fuck? I thought this was going to be like another like swine flu thing where it's just like a topic of conversation. Somebody knows somebody who got it. But then it became the biggest fucking thing ever. And then people, once the media kind of jumped on it and was like, okay, now we, the media, are now going to say that this is the biggest thing ever. And then that was a thing. And then all of a sudden, on the aftermath of that, you kind of saw how the media just slowly kind of just backed away and was like, okay, let's not talk about this as much. And as soon as the media decided to stop pushing it in this alarmist fashion, we all kind of just went, okay, I guess it's not a big deal anymore. But realistically, it was a big deal before the media told us to give a fuck. It was probably a bigger deal than the media was making it after they told us not to give a fuck. And we have no idea how much of a big deal it was compared to how much the media was telling us to care about it when they were telling us to care about it. So my whole point being, with this kind of escalation, with this, like these different UFOs and spy balloon and train derailments, all kinds of weird shit. Like I said, the pipeline being destroyed, like, isn't that a massive thing? Like, I remember hearing that the pipeline was like blown up, and I remember hearing people be like, yeah, I think Putin did it. And people were just like, okay. But then the media barely touched on it. And so within a couple days, we stopped talking about it until the past couple weeks. I've started just hearing on Twitter random little blips of people being like, yo, is it possible that it wasn't Putin? It could have been the US. And it's like, again, I don't fucking know. But it is crazy that happened and we never really pursued it.
Yeah, because people make so much money off that shit. People make much money off the train shit. Like, I think for the pipeline was back operational within like 2 weeks, but they're still cleaning up the aftermath of all the oil spilled.
One of the biggest
trains are already back on schedule.
Are they?
Because that's fucking money. Every time a fucking train goes by, that's like, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
So then what?
Millions, maybe.
So, because I feel like we're on. So when you look at the stuff that's happening right now, these don't seem like accidents to me. And they seem like, just like I was saying before, these kind of minor things that are just
it's literally our infrastructure as a country has been fucking neglected for probably as long as we've been alive, and no one seems to be doing anything to fix it because that costs money.
Yeah.
And it costs less money to just pay for damages after something like this happens.
So you think the entire country is just in CVP Towson mode? Just fucking
the entire country is in fucking CVP Towson mode, and like the train company that bombed a town basically would rather pay damages from all the lawsuits than actually fix what the root issue is. Because if they just keep putting Band-Aids on it and patch it up, they can keep just having the money pile in, and that fucking, you know, it keeps them in the black.
Yeah. Now, I definitely see what you're saying there, but it doesn't, there's two things that it kind of doesn't explain.
Every generation thinks that, oh, the next people that come through will fix that. Well, and nothing ever gets fixed.
I'm in complete agreement that we have absolutely neglected our infrastructure. It's kind of a joke, I would imagine, when you go to like take a fucking train in like Germany and like maybe, I don't know, you're the one who's been there recently, but I would imagine, you know, our infrastructure is nowhere near what it should be as, you know, purportedly the number one country in the world, the most economically successful country in the world. So there's no doubt that our infrastructure has been neglected, and that was probably the main contributing factor to why the whole like air traffic debacle happened around New Year's, and why all of a sudden you have these train tracks exploding out of nowhere. And maybe that could be explained by the companies. But then you have to wonder, it's like, it doesn't explain why it's all happening at once. Like, I could totally see, like, okay, yeah, we've clearly been neglecting our infrastructure for the past 50 years or whatever. But why is it that all of a sudden, within the course of 1 year, it seems like, all of a sudden, all this shit seems to be happening all at once. And it also doesn't explain the whole fucking Chinese shit either. It doesn't explain the spy balloon. Like, it seems like...
to be fair, we're also spying on everyone, too.
Totally.
And that's like, one of the interviews I saw was like, I think it was some fucking dumbass on NBC or CNN or whatever was like, talking to an ex, like, CIA director. And they're like, so... you know, China's sending these balloons to us. Is it safe to say that we're also sending balloons over to other countries? And they're like, we're not using balloons. And they just said it in like a way that it's like, we're definitely fucking doing it, but we're not using balloons.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's kind of the other thing. It's like, at least when the Americans do it, we're not flying a fucking, you know, the balloons from up over top of China.
Yeah, we're not sending like a fucking kite with a key, Ben Franklin style, over fucking Norway.
Exactly. So like, I don't know. It doesn't, like, there's obviously no question that no country is more involved in the affairs of other countries than the United States. And that's why we're at the top. So yeah, I'm not sitting here saying like, China's spying on us, but why? Obviously, we know why, because we're spying on them too. And we're spying on Russia, and guess what? Russia's spying on us. And guess what? There's a lot of countries spying on each other. What I'm getting at is it's becoming more potentially blatant in a way that seems to be escalating towards an actual conflict.
Because, the first thing China said was like, oh, you're going to shoot down our spy balloon? What if we do that to yours? And it's like, I mean, I guess you should probably. But also, like, why are you acting surprised, bro? We don't have, like, your levels of smog over here. We saw that shit a mile away.
Yeah.
Like, were they just like, do they think everywhere else has artificial suns, too, because of all the smog? Like, we can see fucking 20 feet in front of us over here, bro.
Yeah, they came over here planning on 20 feet of visibility. Yeah. They're like, oh, wait, we could have totally done this in the fucking gyrosphere, wherever the fuck level of atmosphere we do our shit at. It's just like I said, the infrastructure thing is an absolute reality. There's no doubt that like our apparently like the database that we were using to control like the air traffic control and shit like that is way outdated. And so it was bound to fuck up at some point in a massive way. Okay, fair. There's no question that our train system is massively outdated and needs to be, you know, renovated, and that was bound to get fucked up at some point. But again, when you see this culmination of events all kind of centering in one very specific time period all at once, as opposed to like, oh, 3 years ago, that train track thing happened, and then 5 years later, this fucking thing blew up. And it's like, okay, that kind of makes more sense. It's like all this shit was outdated, so you probably will start noticing over time stuff getting fucked up. But it seems to be more than that. I never doubt, the fucking big corporate bigwigs, fucking, if they realize that it's more cost efficient to, kind of like false flag this like weird disaster, not false flag it, but like, a fucking chemical spill accidentally ruined I guess we'll just have to cash in on the insurance and renovate the track as opposed to just paying the money out of pocket to renovate the track. I don't doubt that at all. I'm totally on board with that. But there seems to be more at play here, I guess is my point. And, when I look at how I would imagine the escalation to, like I said before, World War I or World War II, these things start slowly happening. World War II, I guess you kind of like, that was obviously, World War II happened because we didn't really solve anything in World War I. That's kind of what you realize, is that literally nothing was solved in World War I. The whole world went to war because we had this weird like tie of alliances where like if this country did this something to another country, then every country that had an alliance with that country had to fight for them, and then every country that was allied with the other country had to fight for them. And so it's like, okay, now all of a sudden the entire fucking world is at war with each other because, one guy shot another guy, and then you have to wonder, like, is that really, like, why did that guy shoot the other guy? Could it have been because there was a bunch of shit leading up to that? So it's like, again, you just kind of have this very segmented version of history where World War I started when Franz Ferdinand or whatever did whatever, and it's like
got assassinated.
Yeah, got assassinated. And you're like, oh, so that was, everything was just cool and hunky dory, and then all of a sudden one day one guy was shot, and then the whole world spiraled into the biggest loss of life up to that point. And then a treaty is signed after literally millions and millions and millions of people died over, you watch that movie All Quiet on the Western Front, and like they say, like after like 5 years of fighting or however long it was, like literally like 100 or so yards was gained between those like trench warfares, and all the people that died from fucking chemical fucking warfare, mustard gas and trench foot and all kinds of shit. And it's like all those
foot syndrome.
Yeah, all those people, soggy foot syndrome. Everyone fucking died, and then nothing was solved. And then we signed this treaty that basically just said, hey, Germany, guess what? We, as the rest of the world, decided this is all your fault. All of it. We're not accepting any of the blame. We're not accepting any of the cost. So you guys have to pay for everything, which then destroyed the German economy. And over the course of just 20 years, really, maybe even probably less, I guess less, yeah, because World War I ended in, 1919 or something like that. And then World War II kind of popped off around like 1938. So really, we're not talking about a long period of time here. So over the course of like less than 20 years, Germany's just spiraling further and further into economic catastrophe. And then that gives rise to Hitler, who then goes, you know what, this is fucked up. Our people are being fucking raped by the rest of the world. We need to fight back. And then boom, all of a sudden you're in World War II because World War I was never solved. So now they really should be kind of considered the same war, kind of, even though like side switch and shit like that. But my point is the space in between. And I think what I'm kind of getting at right now is we appear to be on the upslope of a space in between major conflicts. We kind of have this weird diluted reality because we were born in 1992 and we've never known a great major global conflict that has ever actually affected us. Like you hear about the war in Afghanistan, you hear about the war in Iraq, you hear about this thing over there and the Cold War. I was like, that, like, okay, yeah, but like in reality, it was like a news story. Have our lives ever been affected truly by anything that close to home? COVID, yeah, but as far as like a global conflict, not really. So we kind of exist in this like reality where we're like, oh, like, yeah, war is a thing. I've read about it, and like major conflicts are a thing, and people die, but like, not like that's just like a thing I've heard about. I learned that in school, but like, that's not like the norm. When in reality, it over the course of history, world history, it is kind of the norm. Like war is more the norm than peace in a way, in a lot of ways. So I think people are kind of brushing off, like when we talk about like, if you look at like the advancements with Putin in Ukraine, and then you look at like even COVID could be a part of this, and the fact that I don't fucking know all this shit. I'm just talking, I guess. But like you look at these kind of things that like It's all kind of just seeming like the world is notably stranger than it was 10 years ago. And we've kind of become so normalized in our own thinking to just kind of hear something that maybe 15 years ago would have been really alarming, but now we've been kind of like put in a state of shock as a society where like, whatever, dude, what happened today? The fucking Chinese got blown up over top of California. Okay, whatever. Like, it's just another news story, and then we'll talk about what's Sam Smith doing. And it's like we're just in this weird like fucking like PTSD where we don't even fucking know what's going on. But I genuinely feel like, because like I said, it could all happen in an instant. I genuinely feel like there's a very real possibility that within the next year or two or 3 or 4 or maybe even sooner than all that, like just like with COVID, something could happen where like all this shit comes to a head, and then all of a sudden we're sitting here on this podcast just like we probably were sitting here on this podcast 3 years ago talking about COVID before it popped off, just like, I don't know, dude, this probably be a thing. And then all of a sudden it is a thing. And then all of a sudden you realize all that shit that led up to it starts to make sense. Oh, because it's a lot easier to make sense of history when you've seen it all play out, and then you can look back and be like, oh, well, yeah, well, then the Chinese flew a spy balloon, and then we started noticing that like there were like random like destruction of infrastructure around the country, and the media kind of didn't cover it. And then within the course of that year, all of a sudden it escalated in this massive global conflict, and the public was taken by surprise because they were never really given adequate information to know what was going on the whole time. So we just saw all these different things that are happening as these weird, just
isolated incidents.
Isolated incidents,
stepping stones to the
So I think that's a real possibility, and I think you're right. It's like when we sit here and we talk about fucking, the gay episode in Last of Us, or Sam Smith's performance, or any of the other shit we talk about. It's it seems to be a purposeful distraction from what's really going on. And I don't know, dude. I feel like we're due for something. We've had it lucky for a while.
Yeah. Agreed.
And decreed.
And I do declare that was a beautiful episode of the podcast.
Yes, I do declare.
I want to leave you guys wanting more.
Oh, yes. This was episode 299. I don't know if you're aware of this, but next episode is episode 300.
We gotta have a fun guest for that one.
We got to do something special. I reached out to a couple people, although I think realistically, it would make the most sense to get just like a classic guest, maybe even your brother, because he was on 200,
Yeah. We can get Alex back.
We get Alex back on 300. I reached out to a couple people. One of them is a UFC fighter that wrestled in high school with me at a different high school in Baltimore County. And I, of course, sent this invitation at 1 a.m. last night.
Yeah.
But he followed me on Instagram.
Booty call hours.
Yeah. I kind of thought about it, but I've been like having because he followed me on Instagram, like my personal page, like a couple weeks ago, maybe even a month ago at this point. And I was like, oh shit. And that was when I first realized like, oh dude, this guy's like actually doing something. And I recognized the name, and he legitimately had a UFC fight a year ago and is currently in the UFC. I mean, they only fight like once a year. It's a fucking thing. So like,
they get fucked up.
Yeah. And he fucking dominated that fight. And so he's like really doing well, but he wrestled, I think he wrestled, he never wrestled me. Luckily for him. Just kidding. But he wrestled Matt Eicholtz and Jan in high school. And, so I sent an invitation to him, just kind of being like, maybe I saw him follow me. I was like, oh, fuck it, man. I got it in now. So I messaged him from the podcast page, and I was like, yo, blah, blah, blah. And of course, the 17 Miller Lights in me were like, also, I don't have a fucking mat, but if you want to run a quick 6 minutes in, blah, 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 blah. So I challenged a UFC fighter to a wrestling match.
Oh my
We'll see how that goes. That'll be good content for the cast.
Yeah, you guys can go to the fucking late night sessions at Towson High in the wrestling room.
I kind of like made it in a way where I was like, haha, I don't have a mat, but like I would. I'm hoping he doesn't message me back. Like, yo, let's fucking do it.
Yo, come to my gym.
I'm like, oh, great.
I'm like, oh, fuck, you own a whole gym?
Yeah.
Damn it.
Episode 300, I'm just getting fucking tech
You're
pinned.
in a fucking neck brace.
Do it for the cast, baby. And then I also reached out to a podcast that one of our listeners recommended that we hit up. They're currently coming to Magoobies next month.
Nice.
And my tact now is less exclamation points, the invitation, more just sound like a real dude. I was like, look, dude, I tell you what. We've had this guy, name drop. I literally said name drop. Yeah, Mark Normal, yeah, this guy. Right down the road, we can offer you transportation, beer, no bathroom, whatever. And just being real about it, just like, here's what you can expect, but it's going to be a good time. Expect that. So we'll see how those go. But more importantly, episode 300 coming up. We're also nearing that time of year where we're going to start thinking up that little bar bracket again, the third annual.
Bracket season again.
It's bracket season. March Madness is coming up in college basketball. And, that can only mean one thing. The Baltimore Bar Classic, third annual, is upon us. So Das Beer Hall, the defending champions, coming in hot. But there's a couple new incomers this year. We got Looney's Canton is now the Zen Den, which I can't decide how I feel about that name.
I mean, you got Banditos up in Towson.
We got Banditos in Towson.
The Point downtown closed, right? So now they're going to do double duty up north.
Did the Point downtown close?
I think so, yeah.
I didn't even hear about that. But that is massive.
Yeah.
Because the Point downtown was a major player. They were like an Elite Eight, Final Four. They lost to Wayward by 1 vote out of 8,000 votes.
Yeah.
And Wayward was like, they were a Final Four. So like, I didn't hear about that at all. When did this happen?
I hope that's real.
Well,
I don't
whatever.
know if I dreamed that news line.
You do always dream of
I
the
always
Point.
dream about going on fucking news websites and reading just the headline.
Well, that even though that's what I do in real life, you dream of that. You dream of that too. You get clickbaited even in your sleep.
Yeah.
That's
Hopefully
truly
that's real.
So. I mean, if all these things are the case, then the bracket has shifted up. New developments. This is my favorite time of year when it comes to that.
Maybe it was Backyard that closed downtown. Was there a Backyard downtown?
There's a
too?
Backyard in Fells as well.
Maybe that closed.
So the Point in Towson and the Backyard in Towson both have their Fells Point counterparts. I got to look into that. That's interesting. But yeah, they were all, again, another power player. So that's coming up. A lot of things to be excited about. Yeah, as far as that, any plugs, dude? You just did fucking Matt's fucking show. I missed that, but I made the podcast after, which is
I didn't even know they're doing a post-game podcast. But we recorded Matt's special last Saturday at the Point. He had 2 sold-out shows. It was great. You got the Baltimore Bullets, the classic. Damn, that's sick.
I had to go the Ravens throwback to strip it down for the end of the cast with the Bullets throwback.
But yeah, no, it looks good.
Thank you. I just got
I'm gonna
it.
have to start. I know. I'm gonna have to start actually like cutting that shit down soon. I was probably gonna throw you the audio, see if you wanna fuck around with it.
Oh yeah, that was my
And-
Kool-Aid guy impression.
Yeah.
That's sick,
Other
dude.
than that, I don't really know what else.
Do we know what the name of that special is going to be? I know Matt pitched a couple ideas on the podcast, the post-show podcast. He said should have been a cowboy, which I thought was a pretty.
It should have been a cowboy, and then he also had another one. I forget what it was.
Hey, as far as your boy over here, actually a relatively busier weekend for February. In that I have a show on Friday and Saturday, so you can see where I'm at here. Nacho Mama's Friday, February 24th. I'll be there 4 to 7 in Towson. The Nacho's in Towson. Sure, we could consult with Eric to see if the one in Canton has also closed down, but maybe not. And then for the G-Berg people, Kentland's Vine Alley down in Gaithersburg, Saturday, February 25th. Moco 7 to 9. Outside of that, at Jimmy Selesky, across the board, at Sophomore MD is where you can follow the band. We got a new single. I'm a professional, so I call them singles now. We got a new record coming out in the next few weeks. Really, I have the master of it, so really the only holdup is coming up with the album art, which is a really annoying thing to have your whole single release held up by a fucking stupid 1x1 image that nobody gives a fuck about. So maybe I'll stop giving a fuck about it so much. But that's going to be good. It's called Backtrack. It's much different than In Motion. Kind of more akin to our sound, but I think probably, it's we're getting there. So outside of that, yeah, at Sophomore MD for the band. and at LFTS Podcast across the board. Till next week, folks. Peace.